So we're looking at chapter 8 of the 5th edition textbook. So that's why this PowerPoint is actually a little unique. This is actually some of the sales information. You guys have heard me kind of talk about the 5th edition. It was this really goofy thing that NASM did for a while. It really didn't work very well. It was a book that just people weren't absorbing it very well. It didn't teach the information in a very terrific way. But that being said, one thing that they absolutely nailed, I don't know if you guys have heard me say this before, but was the sales chapter. Like they crushed it when they were talking about like client acquisition and stuff. And like when they were talking about the process of going through an assessment, their information on assessing like scientifically was not very good, but their information for like how to flow like an assessment session was great. Like that's the stuff that they did really, really well on in that book, which I think is part of the reason why that book didn't do so well. Like the big note that we heard from a lot of people and the big thing that people complain a lot about is that it just didn't feel like scientific information, which is actually kind of what NASM was going for in the 5th edition. Like, you know, when I was talking to them, like they were going for a more approachable, like conversational way of teaching personal training, like a little less sounding like a textbook, you know, they wanted it to sound a little bit more like a how-to book. And it just didn't work. It's just not how you study this information. But it is how you totally study like sales information. So it works really well in certain chapters. That and their behavior change chapters were really good. Anything that wasn't like, you know, hard science. Everything that was like a soft science. The soft science in the like scientific definition, not in the colloquial definition. Some soft sciences are sciences that are more subjective, but still very much like a process of science. But people think that soft science means like fake news, like fake science. That is not the same. Those are two totally different things. But that term has been stolen, so I always get really nervous whenever I use that term. Anyway, let's look at quote unquote chapter 8 here, but we're going to look at the idea of client acquisitions and overcoming objections. So let's see here, PFT 100. And we are looking at PowerPoint 8, client acquisition and overcoming objections, which is totally what this should be called, and I'm going to adjust this PowerPoint's name. Oh my gosh. And I'm gonna have to, I had to make the canvas adjustments yesterday. I'll have to make some more today. All right, so looking at this, right, when I say overcoming objections, what do you guys think I'm talking about? Like if you just had to like, if you heard that sentence, what do you think that means, Charlie and Robert? Overcoming objections.
Overcoming objection, maybe, I don't know, not trying to, maybe you can't get a client or something.
Nice, yeah, well done. Yeah, it is essentially where, you know, people will find any excuse in the world. My buddy Patrick and my buddy Will and I all use this one phrase to mock our friend, which sounds terrible when you say that sentence only. But years and years ago, we had this friend Ron, who like we were all like talking about like getting food, and we were like, let's go to so-and-so and pick up food for dinner tonight or whatever. And he wanted to like order pizza or something. And we were like, yeah, but if you order pizza, like it's gonna take forever to get here, and like, you know, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, we can literally just go across the street to Ralph's and get like a rotisserie chicken or whatever. And his argument about like why not to do is like, yeah, but you gotta park and you gotta walk in. And then that was like the end of his entire argument. And we were like, you gotta park. That's like, you just described every store. You just described every interaction in the world when you go somewhere. You have to park and you have to walk in. And so like, we'll use that phrase all the time to like jokingly talk about how hard something is to do. We'll be like, oh, but you gotta park, you gotta walk in. But a lot of times, the reason I bring this up, a lot of times people do that in their brain. Like he wasn't kidding when he was like, you gotta park, you gotta walk in. Like he was like, he saw those as actual obstacles that, you know, were keeping him from wanting to go get food, right? He wanted like a simpler solution. Well, that is a lot of like what we do in personal training. A lot of times it's going to be like, hey, we have this training package available, you know, you are going to hire me so that I can help you reach your fitness goals, right? And people will come up with a lot of different excuses. They're going to talk about, obviously, like price is a big one, but like sometimes it'll be like the amount of time and commitment. They'll be really afraid of like, you know, I just don't think I have time. And it's like, well, then why do you have a gym membership? You know, why did you sign up for the gym membership in the first place if you don't think you have time? Like, when are you going to use it? Or like, you know, and that's like, obviously you would never say any of this to someone. Like a lot of the things that like it kind of boils down to, they're harsh truths, you know, and we don't want to be harsh with anybody. We want to be helpful. But that's like a big one. Time, like money, time is a big one. The commitment, sometimes people just don't like being, you know, caged down into a contract. I'm like that. I get really cagey. I get really like, you know, I put my walls up whenever there's like the idea of like a contract. I don't even rent like a router from like my cable company. I bought my own because I don't like the idea of paying that router fee, and I can cancel whenever I want, and I can resell the thing back on Craigslist or something. And that's just me, like, you know, not wanting to be, I want to be as uncommitted as possible to stuff like that. And then one of the other ones that's kind of interesting is like sometimes, you know, it'll be a person in a relationship who isn't in charge of like the finances. So a lot of times they'll use their spouse as a way to get out of like commitment. And they'll say, oh, well, you know, I'm not really the one who, you know, writes the checks or whatever. You have to talk to my wife, or, you know, talk to my husband or whatever it is. And those are sort of like the four most common objections that you're going to hear. And so we want to be able to have like a way for overcoming those objections so we can help these people get out of their own way. Like me, for instance, I think I've told you guys this before. One of the things that, like, again, like this is like a problem with like this is like a problem that I have with commitment. I get really anxious when I have like tasks to do because I don't like being late for things. And so I get really, really, really anxious about being overcommitted to stuff, you know? I think that honestly is a little bit, I think it kind of comes from being a personal trainer a little bit, because like I'm always afraid of double booking my clients, which I've done, by the way. Double booking is the worst, where like you'll book someone in and then like somebody will call you and be like, hey, do you have that 7 o'clock available? And you're like, yeah, I think I do. And you'll be like, yeah, I've got it available. And then they both show up and you're like, oh no. That's always like really embarrassing. And it happens. You just have to let it go. But like, I'm always like really like cagey about like commitments and stuff. And so like sometimes like I will just like get paralyzed by the idea of being overcommitted to too much stuff. So you know how much stuff I'll end up doing? No stuff. And then I end up being not productive at all. So I get in my own way with like these sort of irrational like anxieties, these irrational fears, you know? And that's a lot of times like what we are helping people like overcome, because, you know, personal training is a commitment. It's a lot of effort and things like that. And so when you start putting that effort in, people get a little nervous. People get really cagey and they're like, oh, I don't know if I want to commit to this. And it's like, why? Why do you feel like you don't want to commit? Is it because like you think you're going to be locked down? Do you think you're going to fail? Like, what is it that's like causing this anxiety? What's causing these fears for you? And when they start to break it down, they realize that like, oh, I don't actually have a very good reason, you know? And that's great, because that helps somebody get, like I said, get out of their own way. One more weird analogous example here. My dad is totally an example of somebody who is in his own way, and he's afraid of stuff. So my weird thing that, this is just gonna be a fun fact for you. A weird thing that runs in my family is what's called a Dupuytren's contracture. It's named after some French guy, but it's palmar fibromatosis. And my dad's hand looks like this. If you look at his hand, it is, yeah, kind of looks like this, where it's stuck. It's not this finger, and my dad, it's the ring finger. But you can see this super thick connective tissue band that is like curling his hand. So if you look at him, his hand's kind of stuck like this. And that's probably gonna happen to me too when I get older. It just kind of is like a genetic disorder. Apparently it only runs in people who have Viking blood. Apparently that's where it started. I don't know if that's true or not, but I read that somewhere once, which is weird because I don't have much Viking blood, but but that's like kind of weird. That's a weird like disease, right? It's a super easy fix. It's really not that hard. What they do, they go in there and they shave that connective tissue off, and they open your hand back up. It's an afternoon's worth of surgery. Like literally, like nothing complicated. I don't even know if they even put you all the way under. I think they might even just like, maybe deaden just the area. They open it up, they cut the band, they let your hand open up, and bada bing, bada boom, you have a normal hand again. My dad's been dealing with this for over 10 years. And I've told him how easy the surgery is. I've showed him videos of how easy it is. We've scheduled out, like he's about to go on like winter break, like the whole moving industry kind of shuts down in a couple weeks. Like this would be the perfect time for him to go get this surgery, and he won't do it because it's like, well, what if I need my hand? What if this? What if that? And it's like, we could come up with what if scenarios to keep you from doing this all day. But at the end of the day, none of those reasons are going to be better than improving your quality of life by actually getting the surgery. None of the costs outweigh the benefits. And that's just human nature. So hopefully that was enough. Like, this is my longest intro I've ever given, but like that's really what we're talking a lot about today. We're talking about how to overcome those objections and help people realize like how to get out of their own way. So before we get into that though, it's kind of cool. Like this is going to kind of re-break down some of the lingo that is in a lot of traditional gym settings. This lingo is what you're going to hear when you are part of like a sales team at like a gym. So you're going to have what are called leads. And I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but leads are individuals who have shown a certain level of interest in personal training services, right? So when I say that, it's a lead is like a person who is possibly interested in personal training. So if someone, it's someone that you talk to on the gym floor, it's someone that, maybe came up to you and asked about like a specific exercise, anybody who's shown like a little bit of interest there, right? So you are trying to generate as many leads as possible so that you have like a group of people to kind of call upon, to reach out to and offer your services to, right? Now, when that happens, like that whole process there is what we call prospecting, which I totally want to put first, actually. I'm going to flip these notes around. Prospecting, right, are activities designed to search for potential leads, consumers or clients, and then we'll put leads here. And then we'll put leads underneath that, and that's a much cleaner note. So prospecting is all about like generating as many leads as you possibly can, right? So when you're prospecting, it's examples of things like working the gym floor. That's a really good example. Working the floor at the gym is an example of prospecting. Cold calling, although that really is not really very common in our job. Like for the training department, cold calling is pretty rare. If you guys end up, for some reason, I don't know why you would, because it just seems like, to me, the worst version of working in a gym. But if you go into just simply membership sales, and maybe that's just me being competitive because like the trainers are always competing with the membership department. But like if you end up working in membership sales, then you'll probably end up doing some cold calling. But generally, when it comes to like selling personal training, you can't sell it to people who don't have gym memberships. So that's, most of the time you're not doing a lot of that. But working the gym floor is an example of like prospecting. Cold calling is an example of prospecting. Another really classic example is like clear up lists, and that they're gonna have a different name for that in every gym that you go to. But lists of clients who have personal training sessions, but do not necessarily have a trainer anymore. Right. So those clear up lists are great. That's a lot of times like where you're really going to establish yourself. But even like a lot of personal trainers will also even purposefully teach like 1 or 2 group exercise classes a week, because that's a great example of like prospecting. Like I love teaching like 1 or 2 boot camp classes in the middle of my schedule for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a great prospecting tool. And number 2, like added bonus is like generally those actually pay a little bit higher hourly, because it's very unsteady work. So I love having like a group exercise class or 2 that I teach in the week at like my gyms, because it's a great way for me to meet like a large group of people. And then those people are like, hey, this was really fun, but like, do you do personal training? It's like, I do, so it's like free prospecting. So prospecting is all about generating leads. And then obviously one of the most important things that you want to do, which we're always constantly talking about, is developing rapport with your clients, right? So rapport is the aspect of a relationship characterized by similarity, agreement, or congruity. Wow, I spelled a lot of stuff wrong while I was looking away. Oh, that's not right. Similarity. Basically, it is the level of trust one individual has in another. That's really what they're talking about, right? That's what we mean when we say like, being agreeable. We mean that like someone trusts and agrees with you, right? So prospecting is all about like generating, a new client list. And then, leads are people who are actually potentially interested. And then when you develop enough rapport with someone, they are definitely going to want to sign up for training with you. Now, I love this stuff right here. This is some other really handy like pieces of like vocabulary. This stuff, by the way, I forgot to mention this. I meant to mention this at the top of the PowerPoint. By the way, nothing that we're really going over today is going to be on your final. Like I said, this is all from the 5th edition. If there's some crossover between, obviously that will be on your test. But we're testing out of the 6th edition, not the 5th edition. So this is just meant to be helpful in terms of like learning how to do sales, not necessarily about test taking today. Back to the thing. So some terms that you're going to hear, you've heard me say this before. I've said like POS systems before, right? So what a POS system is, it's a point of sales system. Charlie, Robert, have you guys ever worked on anything like this before? Have you ever had to use like a point of sale system, like a software where you have to charge stuff?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, I have when working as a server.
Oh, right, yeah. So point of sales, like there's a million different versions of them out there. For the most part, they're all the same. It's like you get the client's list, and then it has a link to whatever their membership is and like how that package works. And then usually it has like a way for you to kind of like schedule their appointments into like your trainer logbook or whatever. Like whatever your schedule actually looks like. And then when you redeem those systems, generally what will happen is that'll subtract a session from like their account, right? So it's kind of like, it's where you do your sales, but it's also where you book your appointments. It's a software, right? We got a little bit of a different definition here, but point of sale is a client who has purchased personal training a personal training package or program at the time he or she is enrolled in a membership program. So what that basically means is like when a new member signs up for the gym and agrees to training simultaneously. Right. There's also POS systems, which is what I was describing. POS systems, which is the software that logs membership data and training sessions, right? So that's like why we call that a point of sale system. Then there's a couple terms here. When it comes to POS, like this is what your boss is going to evaluate you on sometimes. They are going to look at how often you have new business, and they're also going to look at how often you have re-signs. And, you know, like I think I told you guys, I can't remember when I was mentioning this, but I got sort of like, I'd have a conversation with my boss once because like I generally have like a lot of re-signs. I don't get very, like once my clients start training with me, you know, my schedule usually fills up and, you know, those are my clients. Obviously some people come and go, but for the most part, like they get very established and they enjoy their training and they, you know, keep signing up. So a lot of times I will sort of build my entire business on re-signs because I, you know, as much as I do enjoy, you know, training people and I realize that I have to do sales in order to get to train people, I'm not that big a fan of like taking a lot of time out of my schedule to like work the floor and do sales. It's not that I hate that stuff. I just don't, it's just not as fun for me as like, you know, lifting stuff. So like I like to, you know, keep my clients very satisfied and rely on re-signs. But, you know, sometimes you'll get the business from your boss who's like, hey, I can't help but notice like you haven't had very many like very much new business lately. And new business is great because it does revitalize and kind of keep things moving. But like I said, like sometimes, you know, your boss will want you to like have new business. Like, dude, my schedule's full. Like, I don't know what more you want from me. But these are two terms that you're going to hear, right? So there's going to be, I guess I'll put this in its own category here. Yeah, we'll do that. Why? Oops. Okay. So new business. Which is a new client who has purchased personal training. And then you've got re-signs, which like I said, is really where you want most of your business to come from, which is an existing client who has elected to continue training and purchases additional personal training services, right? So re-signs are where, like I said, most of your business is going to come from. Just like in the same way that word of mouth is sort of your #1 marketing tool, that's something that we're going to see there. All right, so now we're going to kind of shift gears and talk about like creating a plan. This is very similar to what we talked about yesterday. So, you know, this is the process of like forecasting, right? So forecasting is how you are going to determine when you're going to be finished getting your client list for the most part, like when your schedule fills up. How long, you know, if I asked you, like if I was your manager and I was like, Robert, how long do you think it's going to take you to fill out your schedule? You know, then you would go through and like forecast. You'd be like, well, I'm here 4 hours a day. And, you know, I need to speak to, what was our number yesterday? 193 people. I need to speak to 193 people. I'm going to give myself, you know, I've got 4 hours a day to do that. I usually talk to about 2 people an hour. So 193 divided by like 4 hours a day divided by usually like 2 to 3 people an hour. That means you talk to about 24 people a week, 5 days a week. Yeah, should take me about, you know, 4 to 5 weeks. Right? If you're talking to like two people on average in an hour. Not bad, right? That's a good forecasting for me. Like I'd be like, great, Good answer, Robert. I love it. So that's sort of the process of like forecasting, right? It is the process by which trainers and or managers, and your managers are supposed to help you with this, although not all of them do, apply specific percentages based on previous performances to predict future sales or other measurable outcomes, such as number of training sessions. Right. So this is also going to be like, you know, how many hours do you think you're going to work next month? That's also like a question that kind of falls into forecasting, because, you know, you're going to look at like, oh, well, you know, most of the people I sign up train with me like twice a week, you know, and it's like some people are like, well, most of my people train with me once a week or 3 times a week or whatever it happens to be. Forecasting can kind of help with that. And so this is going to be made up of a couple different things. We talked about this yesterday, but we didn't use these terms yesterday. It's going to be made up of your show percentage and your closing percentage. I'm not going to put these in your notes, but your show percentage is the number of like assessments or like people you talk to on the floor, right? And then your closing percentage is the number of people who ended up like purchasing your services, right? So this is going to be, you know, in order to successfully forecast. Am I just getting this wrong? Oh, it's with an E. Forecast. Trainers must accurately determine their closing percentage, right? Remember, our closing percentage is the number of people who purchase personal training versus the number of people that you show, right? That number is really, really important. So if you have a 10% closing rate and you need 30 clients, you need to talk to about 300 people, which sounds like so much, by the way. Were you guys blown away by that? Like how many people you have to talk to sometimes? Did that sound like big numbers to you? I remember first hearing this and being like, man, that's a big number. How'd you guys feel about like, if I said you had to talk to 300 people?
Yeah, it's a lot.
It sounds like a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you got to remember, like, especially here in LA, there's just thousands of members, you know, and like you're working several hours a day, working the floor, walking around, talking to people. It's not as many as you think. And I will say, this is what I like about the idea of like these definitions, slightly better than the other definitions, is like they are kind of making room for like the NASA model yesterday almost assumes that it's like 1 session a week. Like that was like you talk to 193 people, you get 29 sessions per week. So that assumed that you signed up 29 people. But what about people who are training 3 times a week? You know, suddenly that 29 goes down to, you know, 27. So, you know, those numbers, that's one thing that's not perfectly accurate here. I don't think you're going to run into the problem of over forecasting. Most people tend to not, you know, struggle with that. It's not like you're going to talk to 300 people, get them all signed up, and then look at your schedule and be like, oh no, I've got to do 80 sessions this week. That's probably not going to happen. But like that's one of the reasons why like I actually really like this 5th edition a little bit better, because this is some of the terms that you will actually hear in like a lot of gyms. Your boss is going to ask you about forecasting. They're going to talk about new business versus re-signs. They're going to teach you how to do that POS system, you know. And so like if you know some of this lingo going into like an interview or going into, you know, first days of work, you know, it's going to make your boss a lot more confident in you. So how do we do like all this like different you know, once we know how to sort of create like a plan here, and we know a little bit about our forecasting, how do we actually, you know, go about this prospecting, right? How do we go out and kind of get our new clients? Well, this is like the idea that like, I love this sentence right here. You have to have the mindset that you're on a perpetual job interview, right? Where you're just always on your best behavior, like, cause that's really what people are doing. You know, they are. The second you go up to them and start talking to them about the possibility of signing up for personal training, there are a few things they're going to consider. Obviously, they're going to consider how much does this cost? They're going to consider how much time do I have? You know, how hard is it going to be? All these like things. But then there's also like the aspect of like, do I really want to hang out with this person who's talking to me right now a couple times a week? You know, are they knowledgeable enough? Like, you know, is it going to be fun for me? Am I going to enjoy this? Are they going to help me reach my goals? Are they going to yell at me when I, you know, step off the path? Like, what is it? Like, they got to consider all of that. So it is kind of like a job interview in a way. So sometimes that can, when you are aware of that, which I want you to be aware of that, that can sometimes make this whole process pretty intimidating. But there's a lot of like different activities out there that can obviously result in like a really positive, you know, fun prospecting method. Like sometimes I enjoy working the floor. Every now when I'm really in the groove, I'll enjoy working the floor. I don't. I'm not a big fan of, like I said, I'm not a big fan of like that process. I'd rather be training someone, you know what I mean? But again, you just got to remember, like, you don't get to train someone unless you do the process. So it's a necessary, you know, part of this industry. And every now and then I do enjoy it, you know, because it's just me walking around, meeting new people, like having fun conversations, maybe joking around with somebody I've never met before. You know, that can sometimes be fun. It's like, it's interesting. It's an interesting activity. So opportunities for prospecting, you've got actively working the floor, offering instruction or suggestions to people. Like if they ask for it, remember, you're not going to go up to someone and be like, can I show you the right way to do that? Don't say stuff like that. But instructing proper technique is helpful if they ask for it. New member orientations, obviously your fitness assessments are by and far the number one you know, best tool that you've got in your tool belt. Handing out towels, man, I hated this until I totally, you know, kind of got it. But I used to work at a place where they would have the training staff. Like it was like if you were not working the floor and you were not like doing anything else, you had to be folding towels and putting water bottles on the counter for clients that were like coming in, because they got like a free bottle of water every time they showed up, and they, you know, a towel to like use during their workouts. And I remember just being like, oh, I hate this. Like, yeah, I went to school for this crap, not how to fold towels. But like people really appreciated it, and the members were always just like, you guys are so good about like being so prepared when people come in, and they were really appreciative of it. And I was like, all right, well, it makes people's day better, you know. Like but handing out towels, right, just so you're there to like have a fun conversation. And I'd have like a lot of really great conversations at the front desk there. Social media, that's a big part of prospecting. Sometimes just sending out a post being like, hey, you know, this slot opened up, or, you know, I'm taking on new clients. My schedule's been really full until recently, and now I've got some space. Anybody who's interested. Welcome emails, going to like company sponsored events and things like that. A lot of like, I'm sure you guys have seen like LA Fitness does this, I feel like, more than any other gym out there, but it feels like they always like hang out outside of like Ralph's and stuff, handing out things. You know, organized events like races or obstacle courses and things like that, raffles, all the like fun stuff that your gym does. I mean, like, you know, Planet Fitness, there's a reason they do Pizza Fridays. It's not just because they're, you know, trying to have like a fun environment. Pizza Fridays are a marketing tool that Planet Fitness uses to bring new clients into the gym. That's more of a membership thing, but if you were there as a trainer, it would absolutely be a personal training thing as well. So that's a big part of like prospecting is, you know, sort of working all those in-person, face-to-face conversational stuff. Then obviously there's also like just the idea of networking. Here's my biggest tip for you guys when it comes to like networking at your gym. It is good to get in with the sales department. Like the membership sales department, they're signing up new members who are getting their new fitness assessments, and their job, you know, the sales department's job is to schedule new members onto a trainer's time slot for like an assessment. They're just going to pick it at random for the most part. Like they have to do it. It's part of their job, right? But if you are like the trainer that the sales department is like in good with, and like they really like your style and like, you know, always have really positive things to say about you, you're the person who's going to get those assessments, you know, rather than Bob or Mary, you know. So that's one of my biggest tips. Like get in friendly with the sales department. There'll be a little bit of friendly rivalry there, but get in with them in a positive way. The other thing that I will say when it comes to professional networking, get in with the front desk. I almost think this is more important, but the folks at the front desk who are checking people in, nobody in the gym knows every member as well as the people at the front desk. They see them every single time they check them in and say hi to them. Their name pops up on screen, like they know a lot. And then there's all the fun conversations that they have while, they're waiting for their car to arrive or whatever. And so like these people are really in good. And so if you build like a fun working relationship with them, that's another really great, tool. So professional networking is big. Now, outside of professional networking, there's also networking, like if you're going to run your own business, networking with, charitable events outside in your community, high schools and colleges and things like that, public speaking engagements, Chamber of Commerce meetings are actually big. I know it sounds kind of odd, but like I've known like trainers who go to stuff like that. The program director before me, Matt, he was all about being a member of the Chamber of Commerce and like the Toastmasters and all that stuff. So like going there and like meeting people, that's a great way to like, again, build rapport. I used to love, marketing with like a local like coffee shop. And I would always go in there and like the running gag was like, I'd go in there to like get work done. I had my little laptop and I'd like work in the coffee shop, and they were like, and the running gag was they were like, you lifting some weights over there in our coffee shop? I was like, no, I'm working on promotional materials and I'm emailing my clients and cleaning up my schedule. But it was always kind of like a fun thing. And so, they had a little bulletin board, and I took 10 of my business cards and pin it up there, and I'd check it every now and then and look to see. It's like, hey, there's only, one left. And so I'd put 10 more up there, stuff like that is part of like networking, and it's really helpful. Cross-departmental interaction, that's sort of, I guess that's kind of what I was talking about with networking. Cross-promotional departments between, cross-promotional interactions between departments. The trainers working with the sales team working with the trainers. Develop rapport, get to know those guys. When I worked at, I was telling you guys about Stafford Hills up in Portland, that is primarily a tennis facility. It's like a tennis club. And when I first started there, it was really cool. They were doing a thing where they wanted to get the trainers and the tennis pros, because they have like tennis instructors and stuff, to sort of like come together. And so they brought in TRX. Check this out. TRX for tennis. TRX partnered with this other company called like Tennis something something. And they put together like a certification, which we didn't get, but we did get to do the workshop. And it was like all about like, it's like a $3 workout. But it was all about like specific TRX exercises that are good for tennis. And then there was this other side of it, which I don't remember what it was called. Oh man, TRX for tennis partnership. This other company that does like cardio tennis. Yeah, cardio tennis is like this certification that they offer, and it's, oh man, it looks like it's dead. Cardio tennis certification. Maybe they're still around. Okay, yeah, this looks like they're still alive. So cardio tennis is like a specific certification. It was just like what they would do is they would teach tennis pros how to run these drills, where you'd have a ball and you would like serve it to the back corner, and then you would serve it here, and you would tell them ahead of time in the same way that we explain like SAQ drills. They'd be like, here's what drill we're gonna run. You're gonna come up, I'm gonna hit the ball to here, and you're gonna hit it back to me like this, and boom, 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 boom. You do a front hand and a back hand and a back, whatever. It was kind of fun. And so TRX partnered with this company for a little while. It fizzled out. You can tell that cardio tennis and TRX, they totally fizzled out a little bit. But basically, it looked something like this.
So here we are. We just finished the warm-up, and we're demoing.
So it's like you would do these specific exercises. I don't know if you would actually, I don't know if that's one. That looks silly to me. But you can see they all got tennis stuff in hand.
8 players
Okay, yeah. And he would do like, he's going to do a split lunge. Okay, never mind. He's going to do a high knee. And then meanwhile, there'd be a second coach who's doing like tennis stuff with these same people. So he's explaining it while they're doing this. They're going to go through it. And then, they're going to do like a specific drill. I want to find like a more interactive drill. That was not. Okay, yeah. So see all these different, they're all on the court simultaneously. This person's doing TRX over here. They're going to play a game. Are you going to run the freaking drill, dude? Man, this certification deserved to die. Look at this. This is like, market your materials. There we go. So just like kind of goofing around with the ball here. But anyway, terrible example. Anyway, the training department worked with the tennis pros, and it was like this cross-departmental thing. And to me, like I was like new when this started happening, so I was like, this is really cool that you guys like have this like cross-promotional like thing here. And then I like go back with like all my fellow trainers, and they're like, yeah, we've never talked to any of those guys before. That was the first time we've ever interacted with them. And I was like, what? I was like, you guys both work in the same club. And then I started working there. And sure enough, I never talked to any of the tennis pros. They were all like downstairs in the tennis area, whereas like all the training stuff was upstairs. And it was a thing. And I was like, that is a super missed opportunity. And, I remember talking to my boss about it and being like, we should do like stuff where we get to like work together. It's like, we did the cardio tennis thing. And I was like, yeah, but that didn't bring any members in. Like you taught us how to do cardio tennis, and then we didn't invite any of the members to do it. So it's kind of a weird, anyway, it's a weird thing. But that cross-departmental stuff, get to know your coworkers. It's a super helpful tool for your forecasting. They're going to bring people to you. You're going to say something, Robert, you're going to drop a piece of info like, yeah, I used to have really tight calves, but thanks to corrective exercise, I was able to fix that. And you're having a conversation with someone, I'm going to say at the water cooler. And then they're going to go, oh, that's really cool. It's like, yeah, I have tight calves myself. It's like, oh, well, if you ever want me to show you a couple stretches, let me show you. And then, maybe you show that salesperson that. And then next time they sign up a new member, they're going to be like, I'm going to put you with Robert. He's our expert, mobility guy in this gym. So that's why that cross-departmental stuff is so helpful. Obviously, whenever you do this, guys, you want to always do your follow-ups, right? Fitness professionals should never lose contact with any of your former leads, any of your former like prospects, right? Send them an email, or send them, like the other PowerPoint said, like a thank you card. I don't know about that, but send them an email, give them a call within 24 hours of like meeting with any new prospects, and then if they're really not interested, you can use this 30, 60, 90 timeline. Reach out again in 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. I reach out to, I would usually reach out about 3 times just to see how they're doing. If I did a fitness assessment with someone and, I built them a program and like they were like, yeah, I'm really not interested in like training. You know what, that's great. That's fine. Take this program. I think it's going to work really well for you. I reach out in 30 days and I'm like, hey, how's the program going? And they were like, it was great, but I kind of feel like I need something new now. And I would say something like, well, if you'd like to come in for training, like, we're running this promotion right now or something like that, if we happen to be, and see if they're interested in maybe signing up for sessions. It's like, maybe you can get a little more personalized experience this time, or I can write you another program. If they say no again, reach out again in 60 days. Like, hey, how's everything going? We spoke a long time ago. Try 90 days. If they don't sign, if they're not interested in 3 months, that's, in my opinion, kind of the end of it. Obviously, you can keep their contact info. You can keep reaching out. But at some point, it's almost like a waste of time. Social media is a great way to stay in contact with people. And then obviously, like, re-signing your clients. So shifting gears a little bit. Actually, before I do you guys have any questions? Charlie, Robert, you guys feeling good?
All good.
All good.
All right. Here.
All right, love it. So let's talk a little bit about like how to build rapport. So we've talked about rapport. It's it's this idea that someone trusts you, right? So again, like if we're talking about how to build rapport, some of the best things you can do, always ask for their name. Ask for their name and use it. It is disarming. People like it when they hear their name. They say it's everyone's favorite word. I don't know if that's true or not. But like that is like that's a great way to kind of just instantly build a little bit of like intimacy, a little bit of closeness with someone. Find out where they're from. That's always a great conversation starter. It's funny, I was having a conversation about this the other day with my roommates, and I was like, some people, they always talk about how like they're like, I only want to have like, I want to have deep conversations. And I think that's great. But like some people are like, they put down the, what do you do? Where are you from? Like those conversations and stuff. They put down like that because it's like, oh, that's the same conversation that everybody has. And like, I don't have anything against those conversations. I think that those conversations are valuable tools that get you to meaningful conversation because it gives you time to sort of build a little bit of rapport with someone and like, get through that social awkward sluggishness, of like talking to like a stranger. So like this is just like a tool. It's the same thing when you say hi to someone, the social contracts say that they're supposed to say hi back, like it's built into, the human nature, right?
It's the icebreaker questions that people,
yeah,
you gotta do the icebreaker first,
Totally, right? You wouldn't just like, go ask for someone, someone's what their favorite hobbies are without at least saying hi to them first. It's all it is a salutation, Now obviously like you do want to pivot that conversation and get into something real. But that's going to happen next. So ask them what their name is, find out where they're from, maybe where they live now, like if they're local in the area or anything like that. Ask about their family. It starts to sound a little creepy. But no, you're gonna ask if any of their family members or do they have kids or anything like that, what they do for a living, what their hobbies are. That's my favorite one. So what do you like to do? That's like one of my favorites. What's your favorite activities in like a gym setting? And then this is a great one. Ask them where they see themselves in the future. That's a great one because it's like, you're doing a great job of like figuring out sort of like what their goals are. Because generally people are going to see themselves favorably like where they want to go, right? And so like, if your job is to like help people get where they want to go, that can be a really powerful question because you're going to, open that up and start to like use that in conversation, speaking in like a future tense. That's like one of my favorite things that I always encourage people to do. When I start talking with someone, I speak as if it is a fact that they are going to sign up for personal training, or that I'm going to be their trainer and we're going to be working together. Where it's like, so when we're working over the next like 3 to 6 months, what we want to do is this. And I say we a lot, because even if they don't sign up with me, it's still true. Like I'm still on their side. I want everyone to get healthy, and so like I love like asking like where they see themselves in the future, like what it is they want to achieve like over the next few months while they're at the gym. If I figure that out, I can be like, oh, great. So like you said, you wanted to really get really great at like running, you wanted to run your first 5K or something like that, right? So like in 3 months when you're running that 5K, that's the kind of stuff I can sort of like work into the conversation, and it's going to get people motivated. They're going to get excited, and I'm going to make people happy, and that makes me happy. So obviously there are certain barriers to establishing rapport. If you are not an active listener, that's a big one. Remember, active listening is outward signs of attention. So you are maintaining eye contact. You are asking questions related to what it is they're saying. You're not interrupting them, and you are not in general being disinterested. You're not getting on your phone to like check things every 5 minutes, right? that is a barrier to establishing rapport. That kind of stuff turns people off pretty quickly. Closed body language, that's another one that we don't want to have. And all that stuff is stuff that, like, honestly, you sort of want to practice. For me, it was like getting my hands in my pockets. I used to keep my hands in my pockets constantly. I don't know if it's an Oregon thing, because I was just used to having cold hands all the time in my life, and so I got used to having my hands in my pockets. But man, I was a hands in pockets person for so long. I even had like a manager at like my first gym who would be like hands in pockets. And I'd be like, I know, because he'd see me like behind the desk. I wouldn't even be talking to him, like, he'd be like, hands in your pocket. Like, fine. Yeah. Or like now I feel like I do too much of this, and that's something I need to get out of the habit of. But like that crossed arm posture, that's another one, right? That's closed off. That makes you seem less approachable. So that's how you want to build rapport. Now, let's say you get somebody signed up for a fitness assessment. You want to make sure that you are as professional as possible. Key concepts here, always be like, if you can, 5 minutes early. I will say this is going to be impossible sometimes. If you are booking your appointments back to back, you know, if I've got John from 6 to 7 and I've got Sally from 7 to 8, and I've got a fitness assessment with, you know, Mary at 8 a.m., it's not like I'm going to short Sally's training session, right? I'm going to train her from 7 to 8. But I'm going to wrap that up. I'm going to be in the area so I can wrap that up. You know, this person sees me, they know that I'm around, and I'm going to pivot right from one into the next. And that is something that you sort of like, this is something they don't tell you in books. This is something that you kind of have to establish yourself, and it's going to be different in every gym. So I don't really have perfect advice for you here, but you do want to sort of establish where your training sessions start and where your training sessions end. Generally, that's going to be at the computer. You know, that's where you book your next sessions. But like, that is definitely something that's very, very helpful. Being able to just like establish, you know, a set place where everybody meets you every single time. I always make sure that I'm being super clear with that. When I get like a new member who's going to sign up for a fitness assessment, I always tell them, it's like, all right, I will see you on Thursday over by that desk at 9 a.m. You know, like, boom, 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 pieces of information that are easy to follow. And then sure enough, like, it's 8:55, I'm wrapping up my session, I'm coming downstairs with my client. You know, they're all stretched out. We're talking about what I want them to do in between like our next training session. So, you know, I'm working with them, and I'm like, so by next week, I want you to bring in that food log, you know, and we're going to take a look and see what everything looks like. You know, make sure you get like your 2 cardio sessions in, and then you're going to hit that workout B before I see you again. Okay. And they're like, great, sounds good. Awesome. Also, we're going to book you in. I want to make sure we got our appointment confirmed. And I'd look at the computer and be like, all right, we get you booked for, you know, this time next week, blah, 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 just like last time. And they're going to go, great. They're going to leave. I'll be like, see you later. Hi, how are you? Let's go ahead and head upstairs. You know, boom, boom, boom. You're flowing your sessions. The real art, guys, is finding time to eat in between those sessions. Granola bars and protein bars are your best friend. So always be 5 minutes early. Obviously, you can't start the session early, but be in the area, be around, wear the appropriate and professional attire. Don't lose sight of your goal. Remember, like, you are here to like teach people how to exercise and stuff. Don't focus too much on the sales, you know? The more it's almost like, it's athletes will say the same thing, right? At the end of the day, you always go back to your fundamentals. Fundamentally, you're a trainer, you know? Yeah, you got to do sales in order to be able to do that. But like, don't lose sight of your overall goal, which is to like, you know, train and help people. Maintain your focus on the client the entire time. Make sure that you're not worrying about your next appointment. I will say in this world, it sucks. Text messaging is so convenient, and it has enhanced the world in a lot of ways, but it has also made us as a species like less punctual, because now you can be like, hey, I know I'm supposed to be there now, but I texted you, which is almost like being there now. So you should forgive me for being late. And it's like, ugh. Sorry, I'm going full boomer over here. But like, you know, it's sometimes hard to like when your phone's blowing up like crazy. You know, you're worried. You look over at the cardio and you don't see your client. You know, and you're like, man, normally they're here by now, and my phone's been ringing. I'll bet that's them telling me that their car broke down or something. You know, you can find times in your training sessions. There is being realistic. I'm going to tell you. You can see here, always focus on the client. Don't ever whip out your phone. That is true, but if they go get a water break or something, I mean, the real answer in the real world is like, yeah, glance at your phone really quick, make sure that your next appointment's showing up on time, you know? There is room for stuff like that. Just make sure that like it is not pulling away from your current session. Never sacrifice like who you're training with currently to, you know, but to multitask for someone whose session hasn't started yet. And that's the juggling act, you know, that's the real life answer to that juggling act. You know, everyone's going to want to sound like they are the most responsible person in the world. And they're going to tell you never be on your phone. It's unrealistic. You know, phones are how we communicate with our clients. So, just make sure that you are not letting one client bleed into another's time. Seek to inspire. That's huge. There's your PSA for the day. I feel like that's almost the most valuable. I feel like that's actually almost the most valuable thing I've said today. But it's not, you know, written down anywhere. And then always follow like these specific behaviors that help enhance your credibility, right? You're going to want to be dependable. You want to have good integrity. Part of this, by the way, having good integrity is making sure that like I always explain like the cancellation policy to my clients like crazy, because people love to not understand the cancellation policies. And they're like, oh, well, you know, I woke up late and I couldn't be here. Can't you just not charge me? And it's like, we talked about this. Like, we were really clear up front. If you don't give me 24 hours notice, like I could have booked someone else into that hour. So, you know, have integrity with that. I think that goes the other way, you know. Now, on the flip side, you know, be empathetic. Obviously, I was a little overly sympathetic to people. I had a 3-strike policy. I really actually don't recommend that for you guys. But I would give people 3 chances. You know, I'd let them cancel their appointments 3 times. And that has probably cost me, you know, thousands of dollars, and has probably cost my clients the ability to build good habits, you know. But we'll say I am weak-willed. But be always honest and overall consistent. Consistency is key, and try to be a role model to your clients. You know, practice what you preach. Be honest and outright with them. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up today with the objections part of things that we talked about at the beginning, right? How to sort of overcome all these objections. So overcoming, that's not what I want. Overcoming objections. So this is sort of a 4-step process. When you want to, if someone gives you like a lot of pushback on something, if you're trying to make a sale and someone gives you a lot of pushback and they say, I can't afford it, I don't have the time, I'm afraid of the commitment, whatever. This is sort of a 4-step process that you can go through. You want to, actually, you know, I'll give this a definition. Tools in a trainer's tool belt. This is clearly a Brad definition. That assist in helping clients get out of their own way and sign up for training. Right? So we are helping them sort of, you know, on this path. And it's, like I said, it's a 4-step process. You're going to first validate what they are saying, you know, hear what they say. I think this is the biggest mistake that a lot of people make when it comes to sales. And a lot of times this is sort of like what people think a lot of sales are. And it's like, oh, I can't afford it. And then, you know, a lot of people think that they push back on that and they go, yes, you can. It's like, okay, well, now you're in an argument with your potential client. That person's not going to sign up for training, right? You're not going to be able to help that person. So instead, what you want to do is you want to take that in and hear it and be like, all right, I hear you. Yeah, it is objectively pricey. right? So now like you are agreeing with them and both of you are on the same side, which is totally where you want to be anyways. Like, remember, this is your potential client, right? You want them to be happy and successful. So you want to be on their side. But then what you need to do is you need to isolate the problem. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull away any other irrelevant pieces of information. By the way, Charlie, you haven't seen this, but Robert, does this at all look somewhat familiar to you? It's very similar to our behavior change class.
Yeah, I was gonna say this reminds me of contemplation and what were the other ones?
Pre-contemplation,
Yeah,
contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is really similar because all that's because, you know, the human brain only works in a couple ways, right? Like, so we use the same thing, we just use it in sort of a different method. But like, we know that when you are trying to convince someone to change their habits, telling them that their habits are bad puts you on the opposite side of the table. But like helping them realize that their habits are destructive, totally different than just being like, you suck at stuff, right? Like, not the approach we want to make. So we're going to validate their concerns. And yeah, it's like, I get it. It is. It's, you know, this is definitely a financial commitment, right? But then what we want to do is we want to isolate the problem. And we want to make sure that like we know there's no irrelevant information that's like also tugging at their heartstrings, right? So you know, if it was $1 an hour, that you would easily sign up for personal training. Like, you are not, like, the only thing holding you back right now is price. And if they're like, yeah, well, price and, you know, I'm not sure I have enough time. Okay, we have two concerns, right? Like, right, that by isolating the problem, number one, you're making sure you separate, either you only have one thing to deal with. And number two, you know, it's allowing them to only focus on this like one thing, which is what we're going to try to resolve in the next two steps. Step three, we want to remind them of their commitment. So like, you know, if they say like it's expensive and they can't afford it, and then we isolated that and we figured out that like really it is the only thing that they're worried about is like that financial commitment, we want to remind them of like why they came here in the first place, right? So like we will remind them, it's like, all right, well, you know, you said you wanted to get fit, but the problem is that you think that like this personal training experience is going to be too expensive. But this is important to you, right? You know, is this like the type of financial commitment that is, you know, similar to other things that you have spent time on? You know, is this more important to you than, you know, getting Starbucks every morning when you can make coffee from home? I know that's like the classic millionaire freaking example that you hear in every YouTube video. But it really, I mean, they're not necessarily wrong. And honestly, it's more of like the habit that they're trying to instill more than anything. So you're going to remind them, right, of like why they even considered this commitment in the first place. And then at the very end, you're going to kind of resolve it. And that resolving method is going to be through, you know, maybe finding an alternative path, like if there's a cheaper way to get things, if price is the problem, if a financial or if like a time commitment is the problem, we're going to, you know, resolve it by maybe focusing on like, you know, time efficient workouts, whatever it happens to be. So let's go ahead and, you know, see a little bit of a better, I'm almost doing too much time on this before we actually see the slides here. So validate, right? So step one, which is validate. Validate means to express in a meaningful way that the consumer's feelings are understood and make sense, right? Like you are agreeing with them. That is like what validation is. You are validating their feelings. Again, you're trying to get on the same side of the table, right? Yeah, like, because that's, again, that's what sales is. Sales is not you versus someone else, which is what a lot of people think, right? It is you on the same side of someone else so that you can help them. So you're going to validate what they're saying. So it illustrates the customer that you aren't arguing, and it reinforces a win-win scenario being sought, right? You're trying to win, obviously, because you want this person to train with you. and you're trying to get them to succeed. That is a win-win scenario. This is like a thing that I talk about all the time, but like I hate win-loss scenarios. I want to be in as many, I try to put my life in as many win-win scenarios as possible. I don't like gambling. I like sure things. I love to be in a win-win. I use that when I'm talking about sports all the time. Like whenever I'm playing sports and like I'm on a team, I'm like, guys, we got to put ourselves in a win-win scenario here. If we're doing really well on this, that's great, but it doesn't matter if we're failing here. We got to succeed at all of it. Because if we're struggling here, that's what they're going to exploit every single time. That's a win-lose scenario. And then if we're playing really bad, I'm like, guys, want a lose-lose scenario. Like, we're doing everything bad today. So you want to get under that win-win scenario there by validating and being on their side. So let's see here. We got an example that we're going to see through all 4 versions here. I can understand your concern of the cost. $1,500 is a big investment for anyone, right? Like that sentence is objectively true. It is you validating their concerns, right? So a lot of times, like the biggest mistake people make, trainers aim to like overcome their objections immediately by just like providing a solution. You know what? Hold on a second. Robert, you're the one, you've seen this, right? We talked about Parks and Recreation. This is kind of an example that makes me think of this. What is it? Parks and Rec. That sucks. Is that the one I'm looking for? It's in here, but it's like, it's going to be towards the end of the clip. I can't find it. Anyway, there's this great episode of Parks and Recreation. It's like the best relationship advice I've ever seen on a show. And it was like, she's complaining about like being like achy and like, just like tired and stuff because she's like pregnant. And, he comes to her and he's like, I got you a massage. He's coming at this time. And I, got a bubble bath running upstairs, and I made your lunch, and I made your breakfast, and I did. He did all these amazing things for her, and she gets upset with him, like she gets mad at him, and like later he's hanging out with the guys, and he's like, I don't understand why she's so mad. I did all these nice things. He's like, I did everything right. And like this older character is like, you made the classic mistake of trying to fix what's wrong instead of just agreeing with what's wrong. It's the classic man mistake. And he's like, next time, repeat after me. That sucks. It's like, what? He's like, go to her. Next time she starts complaining, go, that sucks. And so like the next time they're like sitting there, and she's like, I feel really bad. My feet hurt. And he's like, that sucks. And she's like, it does suck. Thank you. And it's a great part of the show. And that's totally like, that's how people feel, right? Like people don't want to be argued with. They want to, want to be agreed with. So, a lot of times trainers are like, somebody will say, well, it's a big financial commitment. And a lot of trainers will jump straight to, well, that's okay. We're running a sale right now. Right? And it's like, that's not really like validating their concerns, right? They still feel like you are just saying that to argue with them. Instead, you want to go, yeah, I get it. It's a big commitment. Then you pivot into the other parts of the conversation. Instead of validating and showing them that they're on their side. I thought this said something else. Step 2, isolate the problem. Get rid of that irrelevant information. This is so similar to our problem-solving methods. But when you're going to isolate, what that means is it is the clarification of the true objection, right? It's making sure that the only concern that's preventing them from getting this personal training program is X, whatever it happens to be, time, money, commitment, whatever. You are trying to clarify their true objections here, right? You are isolating the problem by eliminating any irrelevant, information, right? You are eliminating any irrelevant information from this client's like conversation, right? You go to park, you go to walk in. What? Those are not real concerns, right? So you got to isolate and find out what their true objection is. So in this step, you actually want to ask some closed-ended questions. I kind of like this part because it sort of breaks our rules from yesterday. We talked about only asking open-ended questions. Well, closed-ended questions are actually a very helpful tool if they're used the right way. So ask a closed-ended question in order to, you know, get like a very clear objection to the one thing that you're asking, right? So you're not going to ask an open-ended question like, so you're a little nervous about signing up for training. Because then they're going to say, yeah, because and it's a long one, right? Rather than, so your only objection right now is price. The only way to answer that question is either yes or no, you know, for the most part. So other than affordability, is there anything else that would prevent you from starting the program today? That's a great one, right? If they are worried about price, so like other than price, is there anything else you're worried about? And if they say no, then great. The only thing you have to worry about is finding a way to make this affordable enough for them to sign up. But if they say yes, well, then we need to kind of, you know, revisit and go backwards. So depending on how they answer, you will either have you'll have a better idea of like any other objections that might exist, right? So if they say something else during like when you're trying to isolate that problem, you want to sort of begin the process again and like validate that concern as well. It's like, well, I don't think you know, it's the price, and then I'm also like worried that like, you know, I'm not gonna have enough time. It's like, okay, great. I hear that, you know, it's an hour of your time every time, but it's not really an hour. Like it's like something I've said for years. It's not really an hour a day. So many people are like, it's an hour a day. It's like, have you lived in LA? It takes an hour to drive to the gym, and my gym is at the end of my street. You know, that's how bad traffic is here. That's how many humans live in this big ass city. So like, you know, validating, it's like, I get it. Like, it's not an hour a day. It's definitely gonna be more than that. But, right, and then we isolate. So like now what you're saying is you're concerned about like the time. So really like it's a financial and timely commitment that you're really worried about. Yes. And then if they start adding more, it's like, okay, now you start to see, it's like, okay, this person's probably not going to sign up. If they start coming up with like more and more and more and more excuses, but generally people won't. I mean, like I said, most people, you know, they're going to have maybe one or two primary causes. That's why we're trying to eliminate any of that nonsense information. Step 3, we're going to remind them why they're here. So to remind is use the evidence gathered during the assessment and information gathering process to continue momentum in the direction of commitment. So what we talk about here is we're talking about like, you remember they came to this fitness assessment. You just taught them a little bit about like how their body moves. Now you've got some information on like, you know, why that's important. Or maybe you ask them like subjectively, like what their overall goals are, you know, during that fitness assessment. You had a conversation about like, why are you here? Like, what are you interested in? What are you trying to achieve with your gym membership? Since you have that information, you are going to use that to remind them of their overall commitment, right? So the word evidence has been used here intentionally to denote that it's the information offered by the consumer. This is their word. These are things that they have said they want to achieve, right? So you can see here, as we've been talking, you mentioned a few times that your health and being around your children is important. Do you feel that training would be worth investing in order to assist that? So now what you're really asking, like again, I'm going to use an example of like a time recently where I've had to have a hard conversation with someone. We're going back to my ultimate frisbee game, and we're talking about this person that never shows up on time, and you know, and again, them accusing me of being harsh when I think that I was being nothing but truthful. But we had this conversation about like, I was like, well, I mean, you do consistently show up like an hour late. She's like, I know, but it's hard for me. And it's like, I get that it's hard for you. Like, trust me. I mean, I hear what you're saying. Like, you know, I've woken up at certain times and like, you know, I stayed up too late the day before and like I wake up and I'm like, oh God. But, and then I said this, you guys remember when I said this in class? This is something my grandpa used to say. Never stay up late for something you would not get up early to do. So like, would you get up early to play video games? Probably not. I mean, maybe, but probably not, you know? So if it's like midnight and you're not going to bed because you're like, I'm just going to play one more round. Ask yourself that question, you go, you know what? I don't need to play another round. It's not that important. And now if it is important, you'll be like, yeah, absolutely. Get up early to do it. Then it's important to me. You know, what is happening is you're weighing your options. So like, I had this conversation with this person. I was like, you're making choices the day before that are affecting the day of. You want to have your cake and eat it too, but it just doesn't work that way. You want to stay up late and not be tired, which is impossible. So you have to make a choice. You are choosing to do one thing instead of the other. And they're like, no, it just happens. And it's like, when people say nothing just happens, right? Like everything is either by design or by choice. So, you know, like, and that's, again, like I was trying to help this person out, but it came off, I guess, sounding harsh. So that is what we're doing here with our clients too. You're reminding them. It's like, I mean, you said that you want to get healthy so that like you can, you know, be around to do that. This is one of the reasons why like we want to ask questions all the time about like what people's actual goals are, by the way. Like I said, people will often say they want to lose 20 pounds when what they really want is they want to get healthy so that they can, you know, be around for their daughter's wedding someday, you know? That at the heart of everything, like that's often what people's true motivations are. So when you learn that and you have a conversation with someone and you are trying to remind them in this step 3 here, it's like, I mean, yeah, don't be wrong. Like we talked about this, it is expensive, but you know, you said that the most important thing to you is X, Y, and Z. Do you think that financially it is worth it to achieve X, Y, and Z? Right? Like Robert, if I asked you, I mean, I think, Robert, are you an early riser? Charlie, I think you are an early riser, right? Like, are you guys early risers?
If I have to be, yeah.
I thought I remember having a conversation where you're like, "Whew, I'm not a." We were talking about like 6 a.m. I could be thinking of somebody else.
No, yeah, no, don't get me wrong. Like I like waking up early, but if it's like a Saturday or Sunday and my week has been long, then I'll sleep in. But for the most part, yeah, Monday through Friday, I do like to wake up early. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm thinking of somebody else. But yeah, like, I mean, it comes down to your decisions sometimes, right? Like some people are like, oh, I just don't want to work early. And it's like like the best training sessions are early before people go to work. You can work anytime you want. Trust me, you can have a successful training career any time of day. With enough hard work. But I think the best clients, the ones that are committed, the ones that show up every time, are always the ones that show up early. So, you know, like I am not naturally an early riser. I don't, you know, particularly enjoy it. You know, it's all the fun stuff happens at night, you know? So I get staying up late, but like, what do I want more? Do I want to like stay up late playing video games, or do I want to have a successful career? What's more important to me? That's really what Remind is. It's asking this person what's more important to them. It really kind of boils down to almost that one question. You know, is this financial commitment less, you know, more, is saving that money more important to you than, you know, meeting your fitness goals, possibly? So that's really what Remind is. There's a million different ways to ask that question. I like to do it over sort of like conversation. I like to sort of lead people to that realization themselves. But there's a million different ways. I know trainers who literally just, they're like, it's like they put people on the spot right away. I've heard like sales departments just go, so what you're saying is like this financial commitment is less important than, and also like your health. And I'm like, good Lord, like, that is like confrontational to the max. But hey, like, you know, that's not necessarily like wrong. It's almost like, have you ever did you guys remember when you were in school, that person who shows up late for class and they show up late, and they walk in and they're like, sorry, I'm late. And they're like frazzled and they're like so apologetic, and they have like a Starbucks in their hand. And it's like, yeah, like, you're sorry you're late. It's like, I tried to get here as fast as I could. It's like, did you? Because you literally have something that shows me that you stopped at Starbucks. Like, to me, that sends a signal that like you could have gotten here 10 minutes earlier, you know? So that's, again, like kind of like you're really getting people to like recognize that they're weighing the difference between like what's more important to them. And then step 4, you know, oh, and by the way, be cautious here. A lot of what I'm saying, be cautious. You are not trying to guilt someone into personal training here. The goal is to remind them of their own inner commitments. You are trying to get them to hold on to their own personal responsibility. That is totally different than guilting someone. Hopefully everything I've been saying so far doesn't sound like you're trying to guilt someone. Hopefully. So step 4, you're gonna resolve it, right? And so for resolving, what we mean by that is you're gonna offer a solution that fits both parties. So this is where you are gonna maybe compromise. Or maybe they're like, you know what, never mind, I'm interested, you know? You go through these go through these steps really well. A lot of times someone's gonna go, you're right. Worried about the commitment, and that's totally an irrational fear. I should be excited to be committed. It's like, oh my God, what the that's a super committed person. I'm pumped to hear that. But usually this is the simplest part. This is actually the easiest part, because now that you are like on the same side of the table as them, you have a very clear idea of what the actual problem is. And you have reminded them, which has put the ball in their court to make a decision. All you have to do now is make that court a little bit bigger and make it easier for them to step into, you know? So you are going to make it, you know, say, all right, well, what if we were to create a package that fits within your budget? We've got 30-minute sessions available. We've got group fitness training. You know, we can partner you with someone else, and like group sessions, you're not quite getting as much personalized attention, but you know, you're still getting very close to personal one-on-one training, but you're paying a much lower premium because you're sharing some of your session time with someone else whose goals is somewhat similar to you. This is why I freaking love group training, guys. It is the best. Maybe you can offer free training sessions if that's within your budget, if you're willing to do that. You know, and then maybe there is like, you know, promotional deals. A lot of times what you can often do is you can go to your boss, go to your manager, talk to them. A lot of times they'll have promotions and things like that that they can run that are cheaper versions of the session. That's why a lot of times, I don't know if you guys have been in a sales situation, but a lot of times like the salesperson will leave and they'll come back with the manager. When you do that, it's because like that manager has codes and promos and stuff that you don't usually have access to that are a little cheaper. And that is sort of like the actual sales technique when you're sitting across from the table. Took us 7 days to get to. How you guys feeling today? Do you guys have any questions? Charlie, you feeling good? Robert?
Yeah, it just feels like that, like what we went over earlier, the being in contemplation, pre-contemplation, and then just getting your clients to realize like what's important.
Dude, that's so much of what our job is. And like that's what I'm constantly talking about. Like the other day, again, like, you know, I was having this sort of conversation with this person, and I got a text message from like one of the other players, and they're like, hey, what are you two talking about over there? And I'll bet if they texted this other person, Brad's yelling at me, I guarantee you that's like the sentence they would have sent. And when I answered that question, I was like, personal responsibility. Which is true, you know, like that's what I was talking about. This is just this is the kind of stuff that people don't, you know, sometimes this is the stuff that really does happen. This is a big part of what our job is, you know. This is what being a coach is. It's, you know, you're on their side, 100%. You're going to be on this person's side. But sometimes you got to help someone get out of their own way. So many people are in their own way.
The truth hurts, you know?
Right. Yeah, seriously. Well, do you guys have any questions today? That was a little bit shorter one today, but Charlie, questions? All right. So tomorrow we are going to have our final. I want to call. By the way, are either of you guys interested in coming in at 1:30 to shoot like a promo video for Sochi? I don't know if you guys have time in your schedules to do that.
Today?
What?
For today?
No, tomorrow. Actually, you know what? Hold on real quick. I'm gonna end the recording. So tomorrow we've got our final tomorrow. We'll have our review video up, and then we're gonna book everybody in for whoever wants to come in and do cover letters and resumes.